Okay, as promised, here's some variations on the standard folk groove. And in review, the standard folk groove is an eighth note pattern that goes like this: one, two, and four, and one, two, and four, and one, two, and four. Okay, I wanted to say and three, but it's and four, and. So there's no three. On the three, you're missing the strings. Okay, it's basically a silent stroke. One, two, and four, and one, two, and miss, and four, and. Okay. Now, one thing we can do with this is we can kind of break it up into two parts of the guitar. We can hit the bottom string of the chord on the downbeat on one, and give it kind of like a bass strum thing, or a bass player and a guitar player playing together. So it would sound like this. Okay, and that would be. There it is right there. Now, if we want to invite the drummer, we can do what I call a snare hit. Okay, and that is basically I'm putting my hand on the side of my hand right here on the strings just before I strike the strings. Snare typically in standard 4/4 music will strike on 2 and 4. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and you notice I'm not muting with my left hand. All that muting is done with my right hand. I can do both. I could loosen my chord here and lay my fingers down and mute if I wanted to, but there's more ring when I do that. If I only do that, I like this mute better. So we get 1, 2, and 4, and. That's pretty hard to do at first, but once you get it down, it's cool. So it's 1, 2, and 4, and 1, 2, snare, 1, snare. Again, don't worry about your left hand. Just play one chord if you want. You can play a C chord or a G chord or an E minor or whatever chord, and that could be you're really working on your right hand here. Okay. Now I can also take the bass and insert that. So we have bass on downbeat chord or snare hit, bass, snare hit, and then upstroke chord, and then down without hitting the strings, because there's our 3. Then the upstroke, snare hit, upstroke. So it sounds like this. So. Use a little heavier pick here. Have a little better aim on the bass strings when I use a heavier pick. If I really need to do something like that where I got to get the bass going, I tend to grab a heavier pick. Thinner pick, I tend to miss more. I'm not sure why, but. Okay, now that we've inserted a snare hit, we can do a couple different things. We can just put a snare hit on 4, it would sound like this. Or we could put it on 3. Now, when we do that, we're actually no longer playing what I would consider a syncopated pattern. At that point, we're playing now what's back to a simple pattern. Because when we add 3, remember, we weren't hitting the strings on 3 before. We weren't hitting them at all. So when we hit the strings on the snare hit on 3, we're technically doing down, down, up, down, up, down, up. So we're not hitting any upstrokes without a preceding downstroke. And that was my definition of a syncopated pattern. Okay, so that would sound like this, and by itself, without context, it would sound like this. Now, in context, if I were to go from a standard 2 and 4 snare hit to the 3 hit, what it feels like is we're going from normal time to cut time. Okay, it's gonna feel like the song's going slower, but it's not. So check this out. This is standard 2 and 4 snare hit, and I'm gonna go to a snare hit on beat 3, and then I'm gonna go back to 2 and 4. Okay, so here's what it sounds like. Sounds like I slowed down, but I really didn't. I went just a halftime feel by just moving the snare, getting rid of one of them, and moving one of them over to the beat 3. It ends up sounding like the song's going half as fast. That's called cut time. Okay, now, so that gives you some weapons to use. Once you get the basic standard folk groove down, you can add some other elements to it, like the bass note or the snare hits, and make it a little bit more interesting. It's a great pattern to have for when you're by yourself playing guitar, in a situation and you want to kind of add some rhythm to it or some variation, and it's also a great thing to have when you're maybe doing like campfire stuff or whatever. It's a great skill to have. And then the other thing is, in the studio, a lot of times I can't do that because the microphones are so sensitive. If I do a snare hit, it's going to spike the mic and distort, and a lot of times they tell me don't do that. But I have done it. Some songs really benefit from it, but usually I don't do it in the studio. So anyway, that's it. Until next time, God bless. Thanks.